Amid the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank and, of course, with the impending moves that we've seen and Signature Bank, mixed opinions have emerged surrounding the government's rescue of the two lenders. But Yahoo Finance's Rick Newman says bailouts are getting a bad rap. He joins us now. Rick, break it down for us.
Hey guys, well, you're hearing all these pro-capitalist guys like hedge fund operators and others like that say, oh, this is a violation of the rules of capitalism. It bails out people for taking risks who should have known better. That's all true, but I think what everybody's forgetting is that capitalism in the United States exists within a political system, and it's just an imperative that the president is pretty much always going to sign off on the type of bailouts we've seen during the last 2 weeks when there are jobs at stake, which there were in this case because of all the companies that would have lost money, and when there's disruption to ordinary people, which also would have happened. So Biden is coming under heat from Republicans for doing this bailout, as if it would have been the more prudent thing to do to just let these two banks fail and see where the chaos leads. If we had a Republican president would have done exactly the same thing, not because anybody wants to do a bailout, because it's just politically imperative. So for all the capitalists who say this shouldn't have happened, I think the capitalists have to remember this happens inside a political system that demands action. And that's why we have the action that we have seen. And we will see more of that if it's necessary. I'll just add, banks have such a bad rap because of the way they were done in 2008 and 2009. But the huge bailouts of the whole financial system back then actually tell us how not to do it and how to do it. And Biden actually has the chance here to build a better bailout based on what we have learned from 2008 and 2009. And so far, I think that's actually sort of happening.
Well, and that's a really interesting point, because as our David Hollerith lays out in his writing on yahoofinance.com as well, you know, Jamie Dimon is somebody who sort of spearheaded this latest deposit infusion into First Republic. And he has said repeatedly and publicly, like, he didn't want to buy Bear Stearns. And in retrospect, he wished that JP Morgan didn't have to do that. So this time around, you are getting quote unquote bailouts, but they don't involve ownership. They don't involve, at least in the case of SVB, a bailout of the equity holders or credit holders of these institutions. So it is different this time. I mean, in terms of the reaction.
It's very different. So I think there are two things worth pointing out. The way the private sector banks themselves are getting involved in these bailouts is very different. The model up until now was the FDIC or other regulators would find a big bank to buy the busted bank, which is what Jamie Dimon was referring to. And he bought, JP Morgan Chase bought Bear Stearns. They also bought some other banks. And then he ended up not really liking those deals because of all the trouble they involved. So now it's happening different. We're not seeing a single bank buy the busted bank. We're seeing basically a consortium of banks that are getting together to help out First Republic. And who knows if that is repeatable, but that is a different model. The other thing here, I mean, I think the most important lesson from the 2008 bank bailouts, remember TARP, the Troubled Assets Relief Program, that was a big part of it. Those bailouts did not put adequate conditions on the banks. So one of the huge controversies after those bailouts was that the banks went ahead and paid executives these giant bonuses as if it was business as usual. And it created the impression that taxpayer money was paying bankers who caused the financial crisis millions of dollars in bonuses. I mean, that was obviously horrible optics, but the whole thing happened so fast that nobody really thought about that ahead of time. So important when you do a bailout is the bankers, the people in charge of the banks that fail, they need to feel some pain. And at least in the case of these two banks, they are feeling some pain. So they did hold a lot of the stock. The stock is gone. It's zeroed out. So that's a scalp right there if you prefer. And we also saw some reports of some of these executives actually selling shares before the banks went under. Now, that does not automatically mean it's insider trading, but boy, if it is insider trading, I think you're going to see prosecutors go to town on that because they want justice, especially after what happened in 2008 and 2009.
Yeah, most definitely. Lots of good points there. While we have you, Rick, Chinese President Xi Jinping is set to visit Russia next week. It's his first meeting since Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, and we just learned that this visit is going to be happening and when. What does this tell us about this sort of global realignment?
I mean, the hugest question for Ukraine and for the United States and all of Ukraine's allies is, to what extent is China going to help Russia in the war itself? Now, China has been doing a lot more trade with Russia. They have been buying more Russian energy products because it's harder for Russia to sell those elsewhere. I don't think that the United States and Ukraine's allies are terribly concerned about just basic trade between the two countries. I think they are extremely concerned about the prospect for China actually helping Russia with things like weapons. That would be a big deal, and we've already heard warnings from the U.S. government that China may be considering that, and they better not do it. So President Xi Jinping, it's not clear yet whether he's going to meet with Vladimir Putin, the Russian president. I think almost surely he will. Otherwise, why would he be going? So there will probably be some statement of unity between these two countries. But I think then the question becomes, is this just optics, or is there really some deepening partnership that could help Russia with the war in Ukraine? We will find out. Lots of eyes on that for sure.
Yes, most definitely. Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it.